And speaking of media, we have a thread here about the San Francisco Chronicle engaging in what Alec Karakatsanis calls Copaganda. This again, I'll encourage you all to follow him on Twitter. It's at Equality Alec. He is an attorney who constantly points out the way that the press, plays stenographer for police and engages in propaganda surrounding crime. And I think it's a very useful and form of analysis because he really breaks down how the propaganda actually works and what mechanisms are used to propagandize the public. And police propaganda, obviously, one of the more prominent and obvious forms of it. So he says, thread, yesterday the San Francisco Chronicle published what might be its most irresponsible and dangerous article yet on drugs and crime. I try my best to explain it below, and I think it would be a useful example of propaganda for young people and teachers. The thesis of the article is that the Democratic mayor's authoritarian emergency intervention in the Tenderloin neighborhood is great while the sun's shining, but that drug dealers in the Tenderloin come out in force at night. You can already see how outrageously this whole thing is framed. First, as I always do with any corporate media article, let's take a look at the sources the reporters and editors carefully chose to present to readers to tell the full story in chronological order. Guy at a bar who wants drug war. Police chief, vague residents and business owners who want drug war, police and residents, police captain, police spokesman, city business funded nonprofit, business owner, police, city rec center employee, 2 drug users, and a business owner. Note that there is not a single person who opposes the mayor's authoritarian plan, an explanation of a perspective critical of police, a person critiquing or even connecting inequality or lack of care and housing, explaining the established science surrounding drug use, etc. Second, the article introduces its core factual claim and main argument. The city, quote, has made strides while the sun's shining, but it's a different story at night. Then the lead source, quote, drug dealing is the problem, arrest the drug dealers, otherwise nothing will ever change, end quote. You can see which side of this issue the San Francisco Chronicle is obviously taking. It is vital that as many people as possible understand the 2 frauds that the San Francisco Chronicle perpetrated. The first core fraud, crime is down in San Francisco from pre-pandemic levels and near historic lows, and he shows the charts there to back that claim up, despite the Chronicle's claim otherwise. The main argument from dozens of media articles for months is a propaganda fabrication, and what's even more incredible, crime is down in the Tenderloin, even the specific district that they are talking about. Read this incredible thread breaking it down by someone who actually lives there and studies it. He posts a thread by Peter Calloway. The second fraud is unchallenged assertion that arresting drug dealers would help the drug problem. This is like climate science denial. The investment by U.S. in police and prisons for a war on drugs is one of the most widely studied and disastrous policies of the last century. At no point in an article promoting cops and drug arrests is it asked, wait a sec, we've had a war on drugs for 50 years and caged more than 50 million people and separated tens of millions of children from families, and drug use bigger issue than ever? And he posts another one of his threads there. I cannot reconcile the choice by whoever these 2 people are to omit, I'm guessing the journalist that wrote this, to omit scientific consensus about carceral responses to drugs with any notion of journalistic ethics. It's like the dark period of paid drug war propaganda in the 1990s. It gets much worse, though. The reporters allow numerous cops to claim that they just need more money and cops to fix this. Quote, Police Chief Bill Scott, and has said he needs a fully staffed department to make a bigger difference, as though they do not already receive enough funding. Absolutely ridiculous. The following line belongs in the Bad Journalism Hall of Fame. Quote, the department, currently more than 500 officers short of recommended staffing levels, says it doesn't have enough resources to monitor every corner. Whose recommended staffing level? Not drug war experts, not the scientists and social scientists who study drug use, not the residents asking for affordable housing, medical care, mental health care, more investment in the arts for young people, less grotesque inequality. By asserting that there is some objective recommended staffing levels, these reporters are engaging in one of the most common forms of propaganda, couching highly controversial political positions of cops and elites as some sort of expert consensus. It gets worse. Reporters claim that families feel unsafe, local businesses complain, and that some homeless people and residents and business owners also agree. This is propaganda. Who are the some and many people they chose to interview? What do many others think? In a revealing moment, reporters finally moved to the perspective of drug users living on the street. Shockingly, they didn't always believe they were part of the problem. The fact that this sentence can be written by these elite reporters is an embarrassment to the profession. This is all happening in the context of a paper whose reporters have in myriad ways supported the recall of progressive DA for the Democratic mayor to engage in brutal authoritarian rhetoric and behavior. I've written repeatedly about what has become of the San Francisco Chronicle, including its repeatedly horrid coverage of drugs. Here are a few of those threads. And he continually posts a lot of threads. You guys, I really encourage you to go follow him because he is always citing other work and other articles and things that he's talked about before. He says, a final note, look at the lead anecdote. It's literally a guy who leaves a bar, a place where intoxicating substances are distributed for profit, and sees drug dealers on the street. The way drug warriors ignore the far greater harm of alcohol is always revealing. A great point for him to close on. And he often closes with a cute picture of his cat, a little reward for anyone who makes it all the way through the thread. Huge shout out to Eric for his ongoing fantastic work. And that last point really does kind of resonate with me, you guys. Like they uncritically post or write rather that someone who was leaving a bar where they were purchasing, a product to be intoxicated saw a drug dealer. Like, how does that hypocrisy not resonate as you're tight, like in a single sentence, you're able to, it's just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Keep an eye out for that kind of propaganda, you guys. Again, it parallels quite nicely with a lot of other topics and how the media covers a lot of other topics. The sort of the use of expert consensus without actually citing who you're talking about is a very commonly used trick in the media. Same with the many people say, and you don't actually cite the many, and it might be an extreme minority, but you just say many people say and frame it as though that's kind of a consensus among, anyone who's paying attention. These are all tricks that the media likes to use an awful lot. So that's, I'm always stunned that guests don't turn that back around on hosts when they're on shows and someone frames a question. When a host wants to give their opinion, they'll just say, well, many people think this, and then insert their own opinion, right? Or what the network wants you to believe. And I'm always just stunned that more guests don't turn that around and be like, who's this many? Who are you talking about? Cite who you're talking about. Like, it's just outrageous that we all buy into this kind of fucking framing. But Alec is always pointing out sort of the mechanisms and the ways that propaganda is actually perpetrated, and I very much appreciate him for that.